Today's video may be one of the most difficult I've ever made because it's about a poem that is such an amazing feat of human achievement, it's nearly unbelievable. It's actually very difficult to describe the greatness of this poem, not just because it was written well over 1,000 years before I was born in a language I don't understand, but because a full explanation of the entire poem practically might as well be impossible. It's been studied for over 1,600 years and is likely still hiding secrets. The poem in question is The Stargage by 4th century Chinese poet Su Hui. Although it's frequently called The Stargage, its actual name is xuán, which roughly means Chart of the Celestial Pivot, and is thought to be a reference to the rotating center of an armillary sphere. This is an armillary sphere, if you didn't know. It's an astronomical tool. There's one on Portugal's flag. It's hard to know where to start when it comes to describing this poem, and you'll soon understand why. Written during the chaotic 16 Kingdoms period of 4th century China, there are many variations of the story of how this poem came to be, so no one really knows the truth. But the basic gist is that Su Hui had a husband who went away, perhaps on official business, perhaps in exile. He soon found a new lover, the Hooer, and when Su Hui found out, she wrote her Stargage poem in heartbroken sorrow. I say wrote, but it was actually shuttle-woven on brocade, before being sent to her husband, who was so touched by the amazing poem that he cast off the shackles of sluttery and returned to Su Hui. It's unknown how much of that was really true, but the words of the poem would make sense in that context. So now let's get into why the poem is so mind-bogglingly awesome. The poem appears as a 29 by 29 grid of 841 characters. Here as simplified Chinese characters, and here's the original traditional characters. Not that it makes much of a difference to me. Yes, the colours of the characters are actually important, because immersing yourself in the emotion of this art is less like reading a poem and more like trying to solve a never-ending puzzle. You see, the Stargage is not actually a poem. It's a text that is capable of generating thousands of poems, because it can be read in thousands of different ways. Horizontally, vertically, diagonally, you can read it forward or in reverse, in a spiral or zigzag, and the poems are all different, although they all make sense in the context of Su Hui's longing for her husband. It would be virtually impossible to design a similar puzzle poem in English for a number of reasons. In Chinese, a character represents not just a word, but it could actually be any one of a selection of words, depending on the context of the sentence it appears in. Also, in English grammar, the sequence of words carries meaning, so rearranging just a couple of words can turn a sentence into complete nonsense, while Chinese grammar is much more position flexible, meaning it's much easier to craft sentences that can be read in multiple orders. The problem is, some of these characters can have dozens of potential meanings, so trying to interpret a poem from the Stargage can be quite difficult, and scholars have spent 1,600 years studying not just different poems found in the text, but different patterns and approaches for finding new ones. If we take these red segments, we can break them down into 7 character lines. Choose a starting place, read a line, choose a direction, read another line, and so on until you have 4 lines. With the right interpretation, it actually rhymes. Then, if we take this black segment in the top right, a line is only 3 characters, and the poem length is either 6 or 12 lines. Once again, it rhymes. As you can see, the rules for constructing poems differ between colour segments, but the Stargage didn't come with instructions. These are just patterns that scholars discovered. It's thought there are around 8,000 possible poems in the Stargage, but who knows for sure. So what are the poems like? Well, my Chinese is, let's just say, limited. 现在我有冰淇淋. And I don't think there actually is a comprehensive English translation of the full text, so I've just done my best sourcing a handful of different parts, but I can't speak as to their accuracy. Your lovely figures often occur in my mind. Your lovely images make me dream this fantastic poem. With this poem, I express my inner bitterness. With its magic, I release my boudoir plaint. Justice and morality are worshipped in the glorious Tang dynasty. Ability and contribution are respected in the enlightened age. A good horse needs a good saddle. A good bird selects its nesting place. From beginning to end, dazzling my gaze, tangled glories flourish. Wild and autumn pitched, wanton songs of China's Southland resound. Thoughts shared in song, nothing but this empty room of a heart. Sorrow swells such longing, all this grief-wounded love. Alas, I sigh with languor over the one who wandered from the way. Far off the wilderness path wounded my innermost feelings. The house no longer has a master. Transparent curtains in the alcove. The face equally adorned in the bright mirror shines forth. Ornaments of multiple reflections. The pearls gleam, brilliant. So many thoughts assail me. Who is seen honoured there? In reverse, this can be interpreted as follows. To whom does the honour revert for prompting so many thoughts? Brilliant the splendour of the pearls, reflections of multiple ornaments. Luminous the mirror shines, elegant finery of the face. Room with transparent curtains, you no longer have a home. Feeling of a deep wound, the path disappears into the wilderness. The way withdraws from here. Me languishing, I sigh, alas. My Chinese-speaking comrades can correct me in the comments or add their own translations. It's a shame there isn't an interactive app with translations for each path, but I'd imagine there would be a fairly phenomenal amount of work in that, unless you crowdsourced interpretations like Genius does for song lyrics. Speaking of phenomenal amounts of work, let's appreciate that Su Hui designed the Stargage in the 4th century. I mean, how could you make this without any sort of computer assistance? It's like poetry Sudoku on steroids or something. There are poems in English where the form is as much an art as the poetry itself, but the closest thing to Su Hui's Stargage is probably this 1597 poem by English poet Henry Locke in honour of Queen Elizabeth I. It's designed to be read in multiple patterns that include St. George's Cross and St. Andrew's Cross, a real patriotic poem, but there's really only a handful of results in comparison to the Stargage's thousands, and any way you read it doesn't result in a particularly inspired poem. Locke's work was not held in particularly high regard. And maybe the poems yielded by the Stargage aren't all that impressive to fluent Chinese speakers. The English translations didn't sound that bad to me, but translating poetry is somewhat of a fool's errand. If you don't understand a poem the way it was written, then you'll never really get it. But there is one thing about the Stargage that did really resonate with me despite the language barrier. You see, the centre character in the Stargage is Xin, meaning heart or mind or inner feeling. Being the centre character, you could say the rest of the text, especially the circular poems, revolves around it, like an armillary sphere. But apparently, not every reproduction of the Stargage through the centuries featured this centre character, and it's not known for sure if the original had it or not. So even though it's commonly accepted the poems all revolve around the word heart, it's possible it was blank in Su Hui's version, as if her heart was absent when she wrote her poems, but time gave it back to her. What an interesting piece of poetry. It's a shame I'll probably never be able to appreciate it in the same way that anyone can appreciate the ancient Greek Iliad, because you're more interested in the epic story it tells than the line-to-line poetry. I think I've only covered poetry in one other video, and that was about a poet who's regarded as one of the worst of all time. My other videos are also interesting though, and of course my speech is always highly poetical, and anyone who disagrees is a big knobhead. So watch them videos, subscribe to see more in the future, join the channel membership to support me with money, and until next time, stay safe. Your lovely figures often occur in my mind. Your lovely images make me dream this fantastic poem. With this poem, Your lovely figures often occur in my mind. From beginning to end, dazzling my gaze, tangled glories flourish. Wild and autumn pitched, wanton songs of China's Southland resound. Wanton songs of China's Southland. Southland resounds. That's difficult to say that. Wanton songs of China's Southland resound. Oh God. Jeez, it's just... I don't know, man. 现在啊，我有冰淇淋。